Like, you don't think it's gonna be cool, but then it is.
Alright, let's do this. Chrome dome, tree trunk, eyeball.
Don't call me that.
Sorry.
We need to, like, get more creative with the names of our episodes here. A few weeks ago, I think it was the first episode of Discovery Season 4. It was called Kobayashiro. Okay? And this episode of Prodigy was just called Kobayashi. Okay? Like, we have to retire that a little bit, okay? Why is this becoming the term du jour of Star Trek lately? Remember the Kobayashi Maru? Kirk talks about it, eats an apple. Oh, I cheated. Oh, I changed the parameters of the test. Yada, yada, yada. We've all heard it. Like, I'm just getting a little tired of it. Like, I mean, yeah, it's canon. But maybe we can, invent another test for Starfleet cadets, Maybe there's another really hard one, Maybe in the last few hundred years we've come up with something else, Maybe there's a Kobayashi Maru 2, just like a new scenario instead of this thing where we're saving a fuel cargo carrier on the neutral zone and it's guarded by Klingons and we have to figure out how to rescue it without completely losing. We want to. It's a no-win scenario, which of course you don't believe in. But the point of the game is to get out with as few losses as possible. So with that out of the way, this is the episode Kobayashi, Star Trek Prodigy, Season 1, Episode 6. And we just came back from a hiatus. I had to suffer 5 weeks of Star Trek Discovery to get to the juicy Prodigy when it finally came back. And I think they knew that. I think this episode is so geared towards fans of old Star Trek that they knew people would love it after surviving Discovery. I think they knew that. As is the case with many properties, the animated version is for some reason closer to the original. I don't know why this keeps happening. A few franchises have had this problem. Is it a problem? Where the animated version just takes more risks. It's just more interesting. It's more fun. For some reason, if something's live action, it has to be sad, disappointing, tragic, violent, nasty. But not so with Star Trek Prodigy. This episode, if you're psychic, you can tell that I love this episode. But if you're a little bit wiser, you might say, oh, well, maybe he slept on it and thought about it a little bit harder. And I did. I watched this episode, and I was immediately in love with this episode. The first time I watched it. And this episode's going to be, the review for this episode is going to be coming out a little bit earlier than normal because, thank you, Prodigy is coming out at a normal time here. Sorry for that little disruption. I had to go for a minute, so you might see a little cut in the video. As I was saying, the schedule for Prodigy is vastly improved. I don't know what it is, but CBS or whoever owns this has some kind of strange deal with Discovery where it has to air after television in my area. So everyone else is getting Discovery Thursday. I was getting it Friday night. That was the earliest I could get it. And I was just asleep by then. So they run a tight ship here. But Prodigy, I got it on Thursday like a normal person. So I can watch it how I want and review it at a leisurely enough pace. I'm not one of those people who will watch an episode and then review it immediately. I'm also not going to review the episode as I'm watching it, which is a glorified recap. This is a review. It is based on my feelings and other such pieces of objective data pulled in to create a narrative, quote-unquote, style video. This is the review for Kobayashi, and it's coming at you at a normal time, hopefully. Not super late. And let's just get right into it. Like I said before, I love this episode originally. I slept on it to give a fair review, and you're going to see why this was difficult for me, okay? I loved it, but it's a difficult review, okay? We're going to break it down like we usually do under A plot, B plot, C plot. Our A plot is we see what happened after the proto drive was activated, okay? If you remember the last episode of Prodigy, they activated the proto drive to escape the diviner, Gwen'S father. And we don't know where we're going, we don't know where we end up. But at the beginning of this episode, we see the results of the proto drive, the fruits of the proto drive. We have traveled 4,000 and some light years through space in a few seconds. Holy cow, this is very fast. This is like warp 9.999 or something. We're not breaking any rules here. We're not going past warp 10, and we're not spore driving. This still looks like conventional warp. It just looks very, very fast. So commendable for not trying to break a lot of rules here. Commendable. So we don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going. But this, the computer, which is hologram Janeway, is explaining to them that we've gone this far. Yada, yada, yada. What do we do now? We don't know. So we're taking votes. Okay? What are we going to do? Who's the captain? Does the captain's vote count for more? Dal believes he is the captain. And rok-tahk and someone else, they come up to Dal and they're like, we take a vote. We wanted to go back to the Federation. That's where we want to go. Okay? But Dal is, of course, wasting his time with that cone and ball game, cone and disc game, whatever you call it. Remember that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where there was someone peddling like VR glasses games to the crew of the Enterprise, and they would put it on, and it was some kind of game where they had to put a ball into a cone or something? Remember that? But the secret point of this was that it infected your brain. Like, it made you addicted to it, and it made you docile and easy to take over. So it was actually like a weapon to take over the Enterprise and or any other Starfleet vessel. My immediate assumption when I saw Dal playing this in this game, in this episode, was that it's a defanged version of it. Like, this is a safe version, because maybe the game actually was fun, but they changed the programming to make it not super addictive, maybe. I don't know. But my immediate assumption was that this was a safer version. Some people seem to have a problem with it, thinking it was actually the version from TNG, but I never took that. Like, when I watched it, I immediately assumed that this is a safe version of the game. Now, you may assume different, but this makes Dal look kind of lazy, incompetent, dumb, not a good captain, wasting time playing video games, like we don't do on this ship. There are no video games on this ship anywhere. We get to read books and other boring things like that, and occasionally make a little video. So Dal is thinking, how do I become a better captain? What does a captain need? Just the fact that he is asking the question and trying to improve means he's captain material. It's great. It's well written. These characters are originally, they're at odds with each other. They're mean, they're sad, they're strung out, and they're lonely. And universal translators, space, and the camaraderie they feel, it really transforms them. They're transforming into Starfleet people. And you see it slowly occurring. They don't even know it's happening. This is like having your own family and seeing your kids grow up. It's really interesting. I never thought it would touch me in the way that it did. I'm not a parent myself, but it's interesting seeing these minors come around to the idea of rationality, of teamwork, of life, of brotherly love. They are slowly and somehow unintentionally being converted into Federationites, Federales, as we say. Very interesting. It's an interesting way to do a show. Okay, so on top of that, Dal and Jank and Pog, they're trying to play around the holodeck. Okay, because originally Murph, the goop creature, was lost, and Murph had found its way into the holodeck and was freezing on this icy world, and Dal and Janeway and Jankum are saying, oh, this is this ice world. We can go skydiving on SETI Alpha 5. We can fight with Lurpas in some Vulcan gladiatory match. So cool. We can kill Dracula. And they went to a castle in the holodeck. So fun. It's so fun. It's like, it's a way to get kids interested without breaking canon, because we have a holodeck, you know? We can do all these crazy things. But, as per the namesake of this episode, Dal finds the Kobayashiro test. And Janeway is like, you can't do that. You're not Starfleet material. You can't do it. Why don't you play with your cone and saucer game? And he gives him back the glasses that he had on earlier. This is great. This is great teaching. You don't realize it unless you've had a really great teacher who knows how to push your buttons. A teacher knows how to push your buttons to get you to exceed your previous parameters. Okay? They know how to push you. They know when to help, and they know when not to help. And I don't know if the writers knew this, but Janeway is really incorporating that into her character in this episode and this season of television. It's like we're seeing an improvement on Janeway. It's really interesting. We're seeing Janeway become somebody who can look after kids, and it seems like such a natural progression of this character, albeit it is a hologram. It's wonderful. But Dal being Dal, obstinate, he is going to beat the Kobayashiro. He doesn't care how he's going to do it, but he's going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So he's playing the Kobayashiro test. He has to save the freighter, and on the edge of the Klingon neutral zone. And we're rebooting this test over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. They said he asked for a crew to help him with the Kobayashiro test. He's in a beautiful rendition of a Galaxy-class bridge, specifically the Enterprise D. That's the ship he's taking into this test. He asked for a crew, and it's crewed up with just the whole gamut of fantastic Star Trek characters. And he's already the captain. And he says, who's this J.T. Kirk guy? And then immediately afterwards, he says, just fill her up with the best you got. So he said J.T. Kirk before best you got. So it's telling me in not so many words that J.T. Kirk is possibly the best captain. Right? They used that in this almost the same breath. You know, it's just a subtle nod. Finally, we're owning TOS again. Finally, especially in this episode, we're not hiding it. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. We're not trying to make the costumes different. We got TOS Uhura, TOS Spock. It looks right. It sounds right, and it feels right. And we're finally respecting it. It's so good. We fill up the holographic officer positions for the Kobayashiro. We got Uhura. Odo is back. We got Beverly Crusher and Spock. Okay. I went into this and I thought, I would change some of these around, and then I thought about it. These characters, they have so many fans. There is no way to win here. There is no way that you could change any one of them and have it be any better, because you would be pissing off so many people. I thought, oh, they should have replaced this character with this character. They should have replaced this character here. They should have, instead of this character, they should have had this. And I slept on it, and I thought, you know what, it doesn't matter. There's no way to fix it without ruining something. So I just took it on face value. Let's just go along for the ride. We had Gates McFadden is actually voicing Beverly Crusher, but the rest of our characters are using archival recordings, and it's so cool. It's so cool. You don't realize how cool it is until you see it. They're using archival recordings for Spock, Odo, and Uhura, and it sounds crackly. It sounds like they're from the past. It sounds like we're sucking these people out of the past, bringing them into the holodeck program in 3D so we can see them. And they still sound like they did in the 60s. Oh my god, it's so unintentionally cool. Like, you don't think it's going to be cool, but then it is, because this is a holodeck, right? It's like we're watching, it's like we put in a cassette tape and we're inside the cassette tape, and we're hearing these characters talk the way they did, the way they sounded like 50 years ago. It's the craziest thing. And it couldn't have worked anywhere but in Star Trek Prodigy, because the tone is so on point. It's so perfect. It rides the line so perfect between what you should take seriously and what you should just let your heart go with, you know. We're really going where our heart will take us with this episode, so to speak. I knew this review would be strange. The syntax of this review must sound very odd, because I'm just in awe, and I'm just all over the place. I can't parse out what barely even happened this episode. It was so exciting. It was so good. With a few caveats that I'll get into. So they can't beat the Kobayashiro. You can't beat it. Okay? Let's face it, you can't beat it. Eventually, Dal says, how do we get off this dang bridge? And him and Spock transport, onto the bridge of the Klingon ship. Might I say, beautifully realized on the inside. Beautiful rendition of the inside of a Klingon vessel. The Klingons in 3D in the Prodigy art style look so cool. Real TNG Klingons are here. Oh my god. And Spock neck pinches them all. We think we've saved the day. We ejected our warp core, shot at the warp core, created a field of matter between us and the Klingons, confused them, played music over the intercom, blasted it into their ears. Dal said, fire everything! One of two JJ references here that, you know, made me feel a little strange in my butthole, but we did end up, quote unquote, beating the Kobayashiro, and then Dal sits back. We did it, boys. Puts his feet up, and then doesn't his foot touch the button on the console of the Klingon vessel, and then it fires a torpedo directly at the Enterprise, which of course has no shields anymore, blowing it up, thus failing the Kobayashiro. It's perfect. It's perfectly in line with Dal's character. It's perfectly in line with the tone. It's perfectly in line with the Kobayashiro and the parameters of the test. So he failed the test. You're supposed to. But he did stop the Klingons. He just killed everyone except for himself and Spock. Spock delivering another line, I think was from the TNG episode Unification, Part 2, where Spock was talking to Picard and said, you remind me of another certain Enterprise captain, yada yada yada, referring to Spock, and I think he used that line for Dal as well. A little presumptuous, but I couldn't hate it. I couldn't hate it. I was trying to hate it. I just couldn't. It was just melted my icy black hole of a heart, and Kobayashiro test is over. Okay. And Dal, on his journey to become captain, he's taken a major step. He's learning how to sacrifice, and he's learning how to put the needs of his crew before his own. Okay. Because he starts off saying, does anybody here know the crew of the Kobayashi Maru? Alright, then forget them. But now he's thinking, my crew is important, and their feelings are important, and we're here to help people. We're blessed with such a powerful vehicle as the Protostar. We can't waste it. We are not God, but we are invested with a certain duty using Starfleet technology to make space a better place to be. Okay? And I think he's starting to understand that intuitively. At the beginning of this episode, he's explained to Gwen, I wanted to leave you behind, but Janeway wouldn't let us leave you behind. Gwen, of course, a previous conspirator with the Diviner, our enemy. And then at the end, Jankum says, he blurts out something like, oh, you're back, Gwen? Oh, great. Dal wouldn't let us leave without you. And then Gwen is smiling at Dal, and oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. Okay. Our B plot. Let's just get off that for a minute. Our B plot. Gwen. We learn about how the Diviner needed the Protostar and needed a progeny. And there's an interesting line. This is key. The Diviner says, I can either find the Protostar or have a progeny. He says them like they're interchangeable. Like he needs the Protostar to continue his lineage, or he has to do it manually, which was against the rules, to create a clone of himself. Why is this? His race, the Valnakat. Why is it that he is the only one there? He needs to find the Protostar so bad that he's willing to sacrifice all these people, all these miners, to find it. Does the Chimerium in that mining colony block their sensors from finding the Protostar? Does the Protostar have an innate stealth capability that we're not aware of? Does the Diviner need to go to the Protostar to get back to his home world fast enough before he dies of old age? He's decrepit looking. He's getting old. He's pleading with Dreadnought, the robot. Please allow me to create a progeny for myself from scratch. We cannot find the Protostar in time. He's pleading with the robot. We thought the Diviner was in control. So why is the Diviner pleading with the robot character, Dreadnought? Maybe Dreadnought is the real villain? So much left to understand. So much left to know. So much intrigue. So much more interesting than Discovery, which was a show made for adults. So we see a flashback to 17 years ago. It's also showing us the star date. We know the star date of this show now. This takes place in like 2083 or something like that. This takes place about 5 years after Voyager, in our timeline, gets back to Earth. Spoilers for the end of Voyager. The last episode of Voyager. Future Janeway goes back in time to speed up the process for how Voyager got back to Earth. I won't tell you any more of the details. Go watch Voyager. But in that timeline, Voyager gets home in about 7 years. So this is about 5 years after that point. So we know now the Protostar was not sent into the Delta Quadrant to find Voyager. That's fine. I think a lot of people are starting to assume that anyway. There's a section in the memory of the computer of the Protostar that's written in Valnakat language. Okay, Gwen's language. The computer cannot translate it for whatever reason. I'm willing to buy that. It's some previously uncontacted race by the Federation. Maybe the syntax of their language is that confusing. I don't know. So I'm not going to assume. But she is able to translate a classified section of the memory. And there's like a code to it. She reads it and it unlocks it. So Val Nakat had previously boarded the ship and classified a certain section of information in the memory and then coded it so only a Val Nakat could activate it. So I bet you the diviner knew that, or I bet you the diviner's immediate ancestors were the ones who originally boarded it. Okay. Janeway's memory is not complete. Janeway cannot tell them any information about the Val Nakat or any information about what happened immediately before this point. All she knows is that the Protostar is here now. Janeway cannot say why it's here, because that's classified, right? Very interesting. Gwen solves the problem, unlocks the information, and shows a hologram of the immediate moments before the ship was quote-unquote lost, and we see the captain of the Protostar. The captain of the Protostar is Chakotay. You know him from Voyager. I won't go into details about why that's interesting. You should see Voyager, the entire show. But Chakotay is the captain of the Protostar. He finds out we're being boarded, and Janeway, our hologram Janeway, says, somehow I'm just now realizing that you weren't my first crew. Confirming that this Janeway does not have the memories of real-life Janeway. She is purely a training hologram with the style and the skills only of Janeway. She does not have Janeway's memories. So our hologram Janeway is more of a blank slate than we thought. Okay, for better or for worse. And we also get a sneak peek of what the uniforms look like on the Protostar in this era in 2380, whatever. You can see Chakotay wearing it. It's slightly different. It's kind of snazzy, but I'm going to reserve judgment until we see a better version of it. So what do we got? Our B plot. Gwen solves the missing data in the memory of the Protostar. We learned about Chakotay being the original captain. Number one. Number two, Dal has finished the Kobayashiro test. He's ready to be the captain. We're ready to move forward. And number three, we need to solve the mystery now of the Val Nakat. We know the Val Nakat have something to do with why the Protostar was lost. And we need to go back to the Federation. And we need to avoid the diviner. Okay? Gwen's father. Who I thought was called Solum. I swear to you, I read multiple articles referring to her father as Solum. But I swear to you, in this episode, I heard Gwen say that her home planet is Solum. I don't know what it is. On the same token, I vividly remember there being a name for Book's ship on Discovery. But now it seems to be gone. Early days, folks. Some of these names aren't exactly clear. But suffice to say, the diviner is now just called the diviner and he doesn't have a name. No biggie. There's also a little bit of a C-plot with rok-tahk trying to find Murph, and then Murph comically eating photonic grenades that are just laying about for some reason. I don't know why. And then Murph explodes, and then absorbs the explosion, and then burps out, like farts a little bit, and the photonic grenade cannot destroy Murph. How tough is Murph? Is Murph indestructible? So there's your general plot of this episode of Star Trek Prodigy. It's not a recap, it's more of a blow-by-blow, hitting the emotional high points. You should watch it for yourself to see what I mean. Some beautiful pieces of music in here. Beautiful visuals. Protostar looks amazing, for the most part. Very cool visuals in the flashback to the diviner, seeing him get in his regeneration pod and creating Gwen. Great character moments, great interactions between all our characters. Wonderful interaction between Jankum and Dal and how they play off each other. A great scene between Gwen and Zero. Zero playing the part of the therapist, and Gwen coming to terms with being a rehabilitated villain. If you catch my drift. I'm not going to go that much more into that. Now, finally, I have to talk about this one moment in this episode where I left out one of the holographic officers that went into the Kobayashiro, and the last holographic officer that Dal needed. Dal needed an engineer, and Jankum left humorously, and he called up an engineer, and what's the best he got? It's Scotty, and it's Scotty from the TOS Films episode. He's wearing the Monster Maroon outfit. We haven't seen Scotty in so long. We've seen him in TNG and Relics, that episode. You know, where he comes back from inside the pattern buffer of the transporter. And he's so well realized in this episode. He looks so right. And it feels so right to have him here. And then at the end of the episode, they said that it was in memory of the actors that portrayed Scotty and Odo. And of course Spock, lest we forget Spock. James Doohan, Renee Auberjonois, and Leonard Nimoy. And it was great. And Dal had a little nickname for everybody. Say the earpiece, Jellyman, Mustache, Big Red. He called Scotty Mustache Man or something like that. So great. So great. If this was Discovery, we would be making fun of these characters and putting them down and trying to undermine them and just insulting them. So well done. I don't know what to say. I had to sleep on it. And I said, there's no way. I watched this episode and I said, there's no way that I'm seeing an 8 here. This is crazy. I never thought that this could happen. This cannot be an 8 out of 10. I said to myself, it just can't be. I watched it. My brain was screaming 8.5. Because I was watching this episode and laughing out loud and replaying bits and getting up out of my chair with excitement. There's no way. I just cannot do it. I cannot do an 8. Because references do not make the show. Okay? As much as I loved it, references do not make a show great. I can eat junk food all day, and it's not going to make me feel any better. Okay? These references are wonderful. They're heartfelt. For one moment, we can allow ourselves to enjoy it. We just survived 5 episodes of Discovery. Just the beauty of this episode. It was so great. We were curling up by the fire and eating all our junk food. Okay? We survived Discovery. Now it's time for Just Desserts. It wouldn't be fair to me and to you and to Star Trek to say that these references made the episode amazing. They made it very interesting. So I'm not going to give this an 8. It had a poignant philosophical core with finding your purpose. Gwen had no purpose on this ship that had a universal translator. What good am I, as someone who knows a lot of languages, for a ship that can translate any language? But as it's said in the show, translation is not what's important. It's your interpretation that's important. Interpreting the meaning of words. And Dal learning to sacrifice and learning that he cannot come first if he is to be the captain. Being the captain isn't fun and games, okay? And it's a lesson that kids should take out of this and take very seriously. Wonderful lesson for kids. This is a wonderful episode for kids. They're not going to get a lot of references, but their parents could watch it with them, and they would really get a kick out of this. So it's working on all cylinders. This episode is firing. It's hitting every button. It's firing on all cylinders. It's hitting home everywhere it needs to. It's a home run. But I'm going to go ahead and give this episode the strongest 7.5 I can possibly give. If we had had more diplomacy with other species, a little bit more of an interesting sci-fi concept as a backbone, and maybe just a little bit more of an adventure instead of just ship in the bottle episode, which this was, this would be an 8. And it's held back a little bit by just being chock full of references. I loved it, if you can't tell, but references do not make the show. We need to hammer that home. If we keep doing this, think of how boring those cherished moments will be, right? We have nostalgia for things that are gone, not for things that hang around and won't die. Think of it like that. So we need to create the new. And a last nitpick would be some of the visuals with the characters were a little strange. I saw a few strange moments of animation that looked not quite done. Murph looked a little bit rigid as opposed to fully gelatinous, and Spock's face was a little bit odd. His head looked a little bit too wide. The other characters were realized in a more realistic fashion, but Spock was a little bit more cartoony. I'm not sure why. It just comes off as a little strange. You may notice it if you watch this episode. Again, that's a nitpick. So I can't really dock it a lot for that. So 7.5 it is. I'm locking it in. It's a painful 7.5 because I wanted to give it an 8. But we just can't quite go to that level yet. Maybe next time. If you were going to watch anything, if you're going to watch an episode from Prodigy, watch this one. If you take all of Picard, all of Discovery, all of Lower Decks, and all of Star Trek Prodigy, and you can watch one episode from those 4 shows, just take this episode of Prodigy. This has something for you if you've watched a lot of old Star Trek. There's something here that's honest and real. And take it on face value. You're just seeing fun stuff on screen. It's not a hateful mess. Just take the small victories when you can get it. Okay? We don't need to look at this like, oh, look at this, they're stealing these old Star Trek things. Okay, maybe. But let's just try to enjoy something that isn't a nightmare. Okay? Let's just encourage good things. But with the caveat that we need to create new good things. Okay? On another interesting point, it is mentioned that the Protostar is the fastest starship in Starfleet, meaning that even though we had classified information in the memory of the computer here, that classified information did not contain the classified information on the Discovery, which if we take Discovery, the show, as canon, was the previous fastest ship that is now classified again. So we still don't know about the spore drive. Good. Alright, I'll see you guys later. This has been Star Trek Prodigy, episode 6, Kobayashi, dumb name. And I'm going to see you guys again later.